I do a lot of driving. So I spend a lot of time in my truck and I do audio courses. And I've been listening to this Father Gray, a Jesuit, who is talking about the spiritual exercises. And this week I was struck when he said, if you want to know Jesus, listen carefully to his words. Examine his parables. In that study, you will come to know Jesus, and you will know his strategy. When he used the word strategy, it struck me because I don't usually equate Jesus with a strategy. But Father Gray gave some examples. He said, think of the Good Samaritan. This Jewish man was attacked and robbed by the robbers, and his kinsmen, his own people, walked right by him. And it was the stranger, it was the Samaritan. It was unexpected what Jesus was teaching. The woman caught in adultery. We know what the law called for, that she should be stoned. But Jesus said, he who is without sin, cast the first stone. And to the woman he said, go and sin no more. The Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the meek, they'll inherit the earth. Jesus' response, his words are unexpected. I believe that's part of Jesus' strategy, to get our attention by turning what we think he's going to say upside down. Where down is up, yes is no, hot is cold. And I kept trying to think of an example. No one will ever accuse me of being a talented athlete. So if somebody came up to you and said, hey, did you see Deacon Bert get that 3-point shot? That would be unexpected and clearly a miracle, but it would get your attention. Today's gospel clearly fits into this category of turning this world upside down, because right from the beginning of the gospel it says, you have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And at the time of Jesus, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth was an improvement. Because if we go back to the first book in the Bible, Genesis, the 4th chapter, in verse 23, and it's called the Law of Lamech. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. At least an eye for an eye was proportional. It even seemed that the response fit the crime. But Jesus turns it all upside down when he says, do not resist the evildoer. If anyone strikes you on your right cheek, give him your left cheek. If anyone wants your coat, you give him your overcoat. And if anyone forces you to go to a mile, go 2. But there is a caution here, because some people may say that Jesus is asking us to stand still and become a doormat or be abused. But he's using this to get our attention, and he wants to teach us another strategy, which is don't repay evil with evil. Further in the gospel it says, you have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. This strategy, this Jesus' strategy, terrifies us. It terrifies me. It's a strategy based on non-retaliation and universal love. I want to tell you a short story about a snake, but it's not the snake in the Garden of Eden. It's a different snake. This snake listened to this itinerant preacher who was preaching this non-retaliation and universal love, and immediately the snake refuses to do any more violence. He will bite no one. But you can imagine the little boys in that neighborhood, once they found out that the snake would not retaliate, began to beat him with sticks every day. The snake is near death when the preacher returns, and the snake tells the preacher of his heroic actions, and he expects to be praised. The preacher says, I told you not to bite. I didn't tell you not to hiss. This is a different strategy. Jesus' strategy is to wage love, which is the opposite of waging war. Waging love brings all the dangers, sacrifices, and cost of waging war, though. We look to Jesus to find ways that non-retaliation and universal love can be integrated into how we live our life every day. It all begins in our homes, in stubborn systems, into our lives, our country, and into our world. I can hear it all now, and I've heard it in the past. Not to retaliate and to love your neighbor is the way of cowards. But we know better. Jesus' way is the way of great courage. Jesus' way is the way of great love. Non-retaliation and universal love is Jesus' strategy, and it must be ours. Remember, Jesus gave us two great commandments. Love God with your whole body, with your whole self, and love your neighbor as yourself. St. Augustine even takes these two great commandments and makes it one commandment. Love and do what you will. It's that simple and it's that difficult. If you act with love, you will not retaliate with evil. When I was preparing this week, I realized that this reading is the right reading for today. It's perfectly timed. I see the results of gun violence in our neighborhoods, and I see it almost every day. Students in our schools live by retaliation, and it doesn't end there. In our community, in our greater community, thousands upon thousands of refugee children are here in our schools, in our churches, on our streets. And each one of them, just about every one of them, has been violated in some way. We know the worldwide crisis of immigrants fleeing danger and repression. We know the Israelis and the Palestinians have been fighting for almost 2 millennia. And you don't have to go far to experience what I'm talking about, because this kind of violence affects us all. It touches us all. What is Jesus' strategy at a time like this? Non-retaliation and universal love. Men and women who embrace Jesus' strategy are compelled to find another way, a different strategy. St. John Paul II said many years ago, no peace without justice. That was only the first half. No justice without forgiveness. Pope Francis, we just concluded this year of mercy. And it occurred to me that mercy embodies love and forgiveness. And mercy never retaliates. So where do we begin? We begin in prayer. I know many of you remember Sister Marie, and I can remember her saying to me, you cannot hate someone who you pray for every day. And I know this works. As Father Tully would say, it's efficacious. And I suspect you cannot retaliate against someone who you pray for every day. Amen.